Here's how I made BRVH in After Effects. I started with 15 different stock vectors of jungle plants altogether. Then I gave each one its own pre-comp, and I rigged them with the bend it effect, and I put a wiggle expression on that to give them each a unique wind blowing animation. Then I started laying out the bounds of the scene with the ground and the back wall. The ground was just a sharpened fractal over a gradient. The marble wall was also a fractal pattern for the stone, the lightning effect for veins, and a slow wave warp on the ivy climbers, and just a bevel and shadow on the text. I lined those up and then started the camera move and timing, then checked with the dither effect to see how things were gonna look. With the scene laid out, I started scattering the plants. So each plant type got a pre-comp where an expression gives them a random position to scatter them around, and then random rotation and scale for variation. And each plant had between 40 and 200 duplicates in the scene. I needed some distance fog, so I stacked around 80 gradients at 5% opacity going off into the distance, and then parented it to the camera. I made a null object that bobs around in place, and then parented the camera to that to make the view bob. And at this point the whole thing was getting really heavy, so I rendered it out to get a clean slate to do the post-processing. So with a clean raw graphic, I could dial in the dither effect, and I went with the Bayer 8x8 in the web safe palette, and I gave it more contrast and a gradient color grade. The sun shafts were a duplicate layer of the graphic with the upper half masked, the highlights singled out with curves, tinted, and a direction blur. And then last was the eyelid transition, which was just a masked shape with lens blur, and that gave it a nice loop.